We have a really special guest today, Hunter McNair, who is like such a good trainer. He's your master faculty, right, with KW.
We're working on it.
Okay, but I mean, very close
I'm
and
close.
at that level
Yes.
because you've done, yeah, so many cool things. And I've actually been to your training before when you came to our market center. And like I like you as a person, and I was like, oh man, like you're a really good trainer. So I'm just gonna hype you up and set the expectations really high for you
I
today.
love that. I
And
love
don't
that.
let us down. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we're really happy to have you. And so, um, if you want to give us a quick bio, and then I want to ask you about your ADHD because I know that's an advantage for you. I know that. So, if you want to give us a quick bio, and then I'll ask you that question, then I'll let you take over.
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. My name is Hunter J. McNair. I am out of Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, so not too far from Tyler. I've actually been in the real estate industry for 10 years this year, which is actually kind of wild to think about. I run a team of now four, that's two sales agents. I only work listings, and then I have a buyer specialist who works buyers. Our team of two salespeople, we sell about 60 units a year. I am a Keller University approved trainer working on my master faculty approval. And I'm actually one of the leaders of the Keller Williams Rainbow Network, and I have my own community, Queer and Successful.
Which there's nothing, I don't think there's anything that exists like that, right? Where you have a group of people
No.
who identify as queer and you're talking about success. These are entrepreneurs, business owners, a lot of
Yep.
philanthropy, really, really amazing.
Yep. Keeping us focused on how to be successful, which is
Yeah,
what we really need to do.
right, right. So another thing, because we were talking about the topic, and you have a lot of trainings that you do. Another thing that you're so good at is getting agent referrals. So we may have you back because that's like the majority of your business is agent to agent referrals, right?
Yeah, because of the amount of networking that I've done through both the Rainbow Network and even Queer and Successful, agent referrals have been a thing for us for a long time.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And that's like the benefit of having a niche, right? Of
Mhm.
going specific versus yeah. Um,
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if I told you this, Tyler, but if you attend Family Reunion, KW's Family Reunion, I'm actually facilitating a panel on niches. So that I think is Tuesday. So yeah.
okay, we're gonna do that with anybody that's going to family reunion because we have non KW people on here too. Everybody's
Mhm.
welcome. So family reunion is like a big KW. It's like the biggest KW event of the year. Lots of conferences and trainings. So if you are going to that, if you're facilitating, we'll get that. We'll get a list going out. So for you with your ADHD, I know that like one thing with ADHD, we have this internal motor that doesn't stop, right? And you do so much. So I guess I'm telling you, that's one thing I've noticed, right? Is you
Yeah.
like you're this energizer bunny, and you have just an incredible amount of ideas. We coached together for years too,
Mhm.
and so if you want to expand on that and or share something else about how ADHD benefits you, I just see
Yeah.
there's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, for sure. I think, like you mentioned, you and I have worked together. The probably the biggest thing is that my mind goes at 1,000 miles per hour, which ends up creating lots of amazing things. So you will often hear people say to me, like, Hunter, how do you do everything? And I think it's just because once we get that motivation, there's really nothing that can stop us. Like my house is the most pristine the moment before a guest is supposed to arrive, right? So it's definitely this superpower of creativity for sure. Having expanded the Rainbow Network, having even with KWU, I was the fastest approved trainer ever in the Keller Williams University approved process because I just really commit to things. And honestly, like when it comes to our clients and kind of what we'll talk about as well with this today, I think that one of the biggest strengths that I have is because I think so fast, I'm often able to see multiple different scenarios play out quickly. So when I'm handling objections or I'm handling conversations with sellers, I'm able to really quickly figure out, well, what are they going to say next? Like I'm finishing their sentence in my head and already leading them on to the next to that next step. So we actually have a process on our team that we call aid, where we aid our clients. We acknowledge what they say, we ignore how it makes us feel, and we deter the conversation to where it needs to go. So it's just that really proactive thinking that has been a really big superpower.
The fast processing. So I mean, if you've been on
Mhm.
these calls, you heard me say we have 10 times the amount of thoughts of someone without ADHD. I mean, that studies show that, and we process really, really fast. So if you've ever had that conversation, and like coaching too, right? Our coaching calls with Hunter, boom, 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 right? Whereas if I'm coaching someone who doesn't have ADHD, I have got to go a little bit more methodical and slower. Otherwise, it's too fast. So you know, it's just interesting, right? When they say, "Oh, squirrel," like, oh, like it's kind of funny, like, "Oh, squirrel." No, it's because we're bored. It's because the
Yeah.
person might be talking slow, or we might know what they were going to say in the first like half of a minute, like you said, and so our brain is understimulated, and we're consistently like curious and looking for things and seeking and having all these thoughts. And so that's why I don't have squirrel as a mascot. It's not something I say because it can be a little shameful. And it's not recognizing, it's like kind of putting the blame on us versus the fact that we might just be like already process what's going on. Um,
Yeah. And someone asked in the chat, like, have you ever had difficulty finding
yeah,
motivation? I think that the dopamine, right? Like I need the
yeah.
dopamine. And so for me, like having a challenge is something that really motivates me, period. So for me, it's almost like, I mean, the answer would be yes and no. No, in the sense of like when truly when I find something difficult, that is motivating for me. And yes, in the sense of like, if it doesn't, if it's not difficult enough, it's like, who can I give that out to? Because I don't want to do it.
Oh yeah. Anybody else relate to that? When it gets easy, you get bored of it, right? It's like I had a coach. I see a lot of people nodding. When I was in with my coach who didn't have ADHD, wonderful coach, Joe Bogar. I'll say he's an incredible human being. That was my first coach ever, and I wouldn't say mastered, but I did really well. I was like number two in the region in my first year in that specific thing, or maybe number one actually. And then I wanted to go do something else, and he said, "Well, why would you?" He's like, if you built out a tire business and it was selling, why would you leave it all and go sell mufflers now? And I was like, that's valid. I'm gonna hand it over to you. I'm gonna pull the spotlight off of me, and then I'm gonna let you do your thing.
I love it. Thank you so much. Let me make sure I can share my screen. Oh, look at me. I'm so quick. All right. Can everyone see what I can see? I'm gonna, yes, no, yes. Beautiful. All right. So you're gonna get a very quick snippet, relatively. This is one of my full classes. In full length, it is a 2-hour course. Signed every time is a near and dear class to my heart because if you do not know, my team actually runs at a 98% conversion ratio when it comes to actually having consultations and getting them signed when we're at the consultation. It's something that I've really prided myself on over the last decade. Really, we've gotten this down to a T. And so the benefits of kind of going over this quick overview of this course with you all is that by the end of it, you'll have at least a really solid framework for what a general seller consultation should consist of before the actual consultation even starts, all the way through when we actually get it signed. So in general, with sellers, a lot of the issues, and I know we're going to leave questions at the end, but a lot of the issues that agents are running into right now usually are following the lines of like competition, competing with other agents. Sometimes it is having conversations around cooperative compensation. If you follow this method from start to finish, you will not have to worry about any of those types of objectives. And really, we utilize two key things in order to essentially guide the process to making sure that they're going to sign. The first being what you see on your screen, which is the circle of trust. So the circle of trust is something that we establish in both our buyer presentations and in our seller presentations. It is something that allows the sellers to trust us, which is something that you really, really, really want a seller to do, especially when you've never met them. I had a listing appointment yesterday morning, and it was for an $830,000 property, and which is luxury in our market in Raleigh, Durham. And I had never met the sellers before, but they hugged me at the end of the consultation after we had gotten the agreement signed. Instead of a handshake at the end, they wanted to hug me. And it's really by following this key method of the circle of trust, which always starts with empathy, which is understanding, caring, and authenticity. But what does that actually look like in practice? Because it's easy to say, be empathetic. Really, it's by asking questions. When we get really good at asking questions, we show our sellers that we understand them and that we care about them. But by also asking the good and right questions leads us to sellers believing that we are competent, which means we have the knowledge, skills, and experience. So when we see a water stain on a ceiling, as we're doing the walkthrough, we can ask them if they know how to fix that if it's not an active leak. If you don't know, you put kills over it, right? So there's opportunity to ask good and right questions so that we can show our sellers, especially ones we've never met, that we are competent to do the job. Now, competency, showing that knowledge, skills, and experience is going to lead to transparency when we answer them honestly, right? If they tell you they have a price in mind that is well over what it's probably worth, our job is not to tell them they're wrong, but it is to always be honest with them, to be honest, to be clear and open and communicate the truth. The thing that's going to show to them that we're dependable in that moment, I like to say, is just caring. So caring about what is going to happen when this does get overpriced, as that example I gave. So for example, we always tell our sellers, and I said this yesterday to my seller, my job is never to tell you what to do. It is just to tell you what happens when you decide to do what you decide to do. So we may decide to be overpriced. Here is what that looks like. And it comes from me genuinely caring, and I'm showing that I'm dependable. I can meet the promises that I'm telling them. I can set expectations with them, and I can, of course, maintain confidentiality as we go through the process. And then lastly, following up and checking in after completes that circle of trust. And so as we get to the end of the process, what we really want to gain out of the entire appointment is that we have established trust with them. And you'll find that if you haven't established trust with them, that they're likely not going to sign the paperwork with you. And of course, at the end, we kind of go through those objections as needed. So the other part that we really utilize for our listing consultations is the DISC model or the DISC profile. So you might know of Myers-Briggs, you might know of other personality assessments, but the DISC model is just a very generic one that we like to utilize in order to understand and utilize where the client is, how they think, and really to determine what adds value for them. Oftentimes, everyone wants you to have a good understanding of what your value is to tell a seller. But for example, if my only value is that I stage properties and the seller has a house full of things that are perfectly staged, does that make my services more valued than the competition? Maybe not. So we do have to make sure we're understanding what personality the seller is to see what type of value we can add them. So for example, we have dominant personalities. Dominant people are like myself. We're direct, we're decisive, and we are doers. Now, here's the thing about dominant people, and I'm going to end up telling you the fears of all of these people. The fears of dominant personalities is they fear losing time. They fear losing time. They do not want you to waste their time. So when you're having conversations with the seller at a listing appointment, you want to make sure that they trust you, that you're going to get it done without their influence and quickly. That is what they want to know. Now, when it comes to I personalities, these are your impulsive, interactive, and interesting people. Okay, myself included. I'm a DI personality. We usually find we have two or more of these personalities that we lead with. Now, I personalities, these are the people who will miss their exit because they're talking on the phone. Okay, like you're driving along and you're on the phone and you're just going to miss that exit. But I personalities don't like you to not like them. They fear rejection and they really love people. So, for example, they might like to hear things about open houses and you doing broker opens and involving the community. They may like you to compliment things or to make them feel like you like them. That is just what an I personality likes. Now, I already see some things about C's and S's coming in the comments. Your C's and S's are usually your less assertive people and your less, talkative people. But your S personalities rule the world. They actually, well, they don't rule the world. D personalities rule the world. But S personalities are the majority of the world. About 69% of the population leads with your S personalities. Okay. They are stable, supportive, and sincere people. They fear change. We all know these clients. The buyer who walks in and says, it just doesn't feel right. The seller who is worried about having to move their personal belongings or take down family photos. They are truly worried about the chaos of moving. They'll likely be attached to those photos, etc. So in this situation, we have to ask ourselves, what is the type of value that someone who is steady is looking for? They're looking for someone who's going to likely take charge, make sure that the process is smooth for them, and that you're making the chaos and the fear of change less for them. Now, lastly, is our C personalities. These are our compliant people. Now, I am married to one, so I can say they are awful. These are our cautious, careful, and conscientious people. Okay. These people, I see all the laughs. I always love that one. These people, these compliant people, their biggest fear is being wrong. Okay. They fear being wrong. Now, in real life, what we usually find that to look like is they will overthink things and they'll meticulously work on things for forever and they'll never actually move. Okay. These are your doctors, your engineers. They are the worst people to have an argument with in a relationship. Again, I have experience because they never want to be wrong. And so when it comes to sellers who are compliant, obviously they don't want to be wrong about things. So they are going to be data driven. They are going to be concerned about the numbers. They're going to see the metrics and research on your end. Your responsibility when you're going into any listing presentation, whether you know their personality type or not, is going to be twofold. One, recognizing what they are quickly, and two, being prepared to add any type of value dependent on where their personality does fall. Now, I will say, I'm a high DI personality, but that does not mean that I come out the gate every single time being super assertive or super talkative when I know I'm walking into people who are not. There's the golden rule of treat people the way that you want to be treated. We do not follow that. We follow the platinum rule, treat people the way they want to be treated. Okay. Treat people the way they want to be treated. And the disc profile is a really fun conversation. And I'm able to pick it apart super duper quick. So go ahead, Tyler.
Well, I was gonna say, and you're a DI, you said?
Yeah, I'm actually like a DIC, but that sounds kind of vulgar. So I just say DI.
Oh, so so you were, because I'm a DC, with an I close, and so now I don't feel as bad that you were hating on us C's. But yeah, I would hate to be in an argument with me too, because I'm so calm and collected and very factual. Never thought about that. Sorry to
Mhm.
anybody that's argued with me, which is probably two people in the world, because I don't argue very. Yeah,
Well, yeah, they, there's ways to combat it, right? You have to just come from a place of like understand with the C personality, you just have to come from a place of like, all right, I hear you. I believe you. I'm going to acknowledge what you said. I'm going to ignore how it made me feel, and I am going to deter the conversation. That is the goal.
So
So,
I'm just going to interject real, and then I'll stop. So
yeah.
if I'd love for anyone that knows their disc to put it in the chat, because I'd
Yeah.
love to see your names. And then if you aren't going to do this already, Hunter, I'm going to throw in a free disc test. So if you don't know what it is and you want to take the test, I don't. Were you going to do that already? Were you going to share like a free virtual one that they could take?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, no.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you can Google Tony Robbins. Yeah.
That one's not free anymore, so
The
I'm
free
gonna
one.
do the
Oh, it's
the
not?
free one. So
Oh.
I'll stop talking. I just wanted I'd love to see I'd love to see the discs, and then I'm gonna send the link, and then I'm gonna step out again. But
Yeah,
that
no,
was just yeah, I love the disc. I couldn't help but speaking up.
I
So
do too.
yeah, this is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at all that, and it's actually surprising. All the DIs or the Is were not telling me their disc sooner than now, but at the moment you gave them to talk, they did it. So that makes sense. That's great. Yeah, most real estate agents lead with I or S. There are Ds as well. You don't see as many that lead with C's, but actually they say that a lot of C personalities usually run mega teams. Usually once teams get built up, they're looking for C's to actually run the business. So um, they're still wrong, but that's what they say. Okay. So let's get into a little bit of the meat of it if we can. So I'm going to basically go over each of the 6 steps in a very aerial height because we don't have as much time, of course. But these are the 6 components, right? These are the components of the perfect 6-phase seller consultation. You will see from this graph that on the left top side, we have the time in which we're speaking. And on the right side, we have the time in which we are listening. You'll see that the more we are speaking, the more the bar is on the left side. The more we are listening, the more the bar is on the right side. Now, the depth of the bar is about how much time we are going to spend in each of these sections. So the first, which is where we're speaking and listening split, is setting the stage. Now, during the consultation, this is going to be a very short period, but I'll show you what happens before the consultation, which takes up more time and really sets us up to win the rest of the consultation. Then we go into our needs analysis and our home walkthrough phase where we're doing a lot more listening. I also like to call this the rapport building phase. This is a great time for us to build that circle of trust, figure out their personality types, and appease them that way. Then we move on to our who we are and our process. That is going to be where we are speaking more. Then we're going to determine our pricing, which is always a fun conversation, closing for the agreement, and then the next steps. So this is what the components of our setting the stage looks like. Like I mentioned, most of this phase is going to start before we even begin the appointment. Out of curiosity on who is in the call, and you can just type it quickly in chat, who does a pre-listing phone call right now? So before you actually go on to the listing appointment, you call them first. So I find the pre-listing call to be super imperative. The pre-listing call is going to be super imperative for many reasons. One, you're going to be able to figure out their disc profile, as we just mentioned. So we want to be able to figure out their disc profile. We want to see what we're walking into. Another reason that it's going to be really important is because we want to be able to figure out information about the property before we get there. Because when we get there, the sellers are going to want to know from us one really big thing, which is price. They are going to want to know the price. In our experience, if we have not figured out what price our sellers are looking for during our pre-listing call, when we get to the appointment, we tend to get blindsided because we're not prepared to handle the number. So during the pre-listing call, and we have a listing lead sheet that I teach in this class usually. We have all these different tools and these things that I go over. But during that pre-listing call, some of the key things we're looking for are the values of changes they've done over $5,000, right? I don't care that you've added a dog bed under the stairs, right? I want to know what you've actually done that's valuable, that gives value to the home. I want to know what they're looking to get on the property. All right. I want to know, is this person going to want to list the price overpriced? Do they want to list it for a higher number than I'm prepared to both justify and handle during the consultation? In addition to all of this, you're going to know age of units, things like that, etc. Motivations, all that other fun stuff. The pre-listing call is really going to set us up for success. Now, our pre-listing packet, that actually goes out either mailed. I saw some people say that they mailed theirs or they dropped it off, or email, depending on how quickly your appointment is. But the pre-listing packet is essentially your entire guide, right? We all have some type of pre-listing packet. It goes over your process, who you are, what you do to market, all of these fun things. We do send that pre-listing packet ahead of our consultation because we want to make sure that if there's an opportunity for us to get to the consultation and the seller be ready to sign, we want to pass go and collect 200, because most of the time I've had a lot of sellers who see our pre-listing packet, love it so much, when I get there, they're ready to go. So allows us a little bit of intel into if they've read it, if they have questions about it. As I mentioned, the one I did yesterday, I sent them the pre-listing guide ahead of time. I got to this part of talking about it, which we go over later. And the seller really just said, yeah, these are the things I have questions about. I didn't have to like go over the whole thing. She said what she really liked about it. And I was able to have a really cool conversation about things that she enjoyed because she read it. Now, sometimes you'll walk in and they've never read it. If they've not read it, it's a possibility that either they're not committed to you, or if they are a D personality, maybe they just don't want to get bogged down with the details. So a lot of the point of the pre-listing packet is so that you kind of get a better understanding of their personality type, and so that you can understand what value they're looking for when you're actually at the consultation. And then last, of course, is entering the home, right? We get to the house. Our team likes to get there at least 5 minutes before, drive around, look at the neighborhood a little bit. I'm weird, and weird's a weird word. I am unique and I am like, I ring the doorbell 1 minute before my appointment. It's just a weird thing or fun thing that I do, I should say. And I ring the doorbell 1 minute before the consultation because I like to be very prompt. When I enter, as an example, I always ask to remove my shoes twice. I do that because once they will say no, and if they really want me to do it, they'll say yes the second time. And usually I take them off regardless. We get a good feel for whether the seller in that moment is actually interested or cares about their home. Maybe they have new carpet, maybe you get some intel there in that moment. But yeah, so that is our setting the stage process. Now, the next phase that needs analysis and home walkthrough. Some people argue about whether or not like you walk the home first or you sit down in the middle first. The way I look at it, I like to walk the home first. Show me around, introduce me to the place. Again, most people lead with an S personality, so they kind of want to show you their house. So I let them. My key thing is that I tell them that I'm going to be walking the home with the eye of a buyer and with the eye of a professional. So what I tell them often is that while most people will walk in just looking straight ahead, I'm going to be looking up, I'm going to be looking down as well. Okay, I want to see what a buyer is from every personality type is going to look at. Are they going to be looking at the cracks in the floorboard, or are they going to wonder about the wavy flooring? So we want to take that opportunity to show them that we're competent and that we're being transparent with them when we see things. Example, one just yesterday, I noticed that the paint in the room was a different color, right? Why is it a different color? Well, there was a leak, right? I wouldn't have known that had I not been paying attention, but I instantly showed the seller that I'm a professional because I'm paying attention during that. So we walk with the home of the eye of the buyer and the eye of a professional. And at the end, we sit down with the seller to review their needs from that pre-listing call and ask more questions, right? Show empathy and use your lead sheet to actually make sure you're getting everything you need to know. So really this section when we're sitting down, when we first sit down, is just to recap what we've already talked about on the phone, make sure there's nothing bigger that we haven't discussed yet. And then of course to offer solutions for all of their needs. Only last thing I'll say about when you're kind of reviewing their pre-listing call or when you are going over the pre-listing call, even during the pre-listing call, is I want to encourage you all to do what I call the dig deep 3 method, which is where you always ask 3 questions deep. You never hear an answer or hear a statement and not ask 3 more questions around it. And it just shows the seller that you really, really care and that you're competent. Next, we move on to our who we are in the process. This is just our value. This is not necessarily a long segment. It can be if you have a more compliant personality, but you do want to show them your MVVBP or whatever your mission, your values, your beliefs as a real estate team owner, as a business owner may be. So we just want to show them not just why they should hire us, but our business. So show them who you are. What do you care about? For example, our belief system is that love, compassion, and understanding come above all else. Our perspective is that for us, this is more than about us. For everything we do, big or small, we want to leave the lasting legacy of a family. And that's something I have memorized and something I can very quickly say during a listing consultation that not only commits them to me as their agent, but also to my business. We share our process with them, which usually we're utilizing that pre-listing guide. Right now we're going into that pre-listing guide. And of course, what we do, how we do it, and our value to them. Whatever your marketing for them is going to look like. And again, the biggest caveat I'll say with the marketing is just make sure you're focusing your marketing conversation around both their personality and what they're looking for. I don't want to talk to a seller about like I said, like staging a property if it intends to be vacant or already staged. That's not valuable to them. So really like focus in on what's going to matter to them in that consultation. And then we go into our determining pricing phase. This is not a long phase either. By this phase, though, you should have a general price in mind for the property, right? Based off that pre-listing call, based off your walkthrough, based off the things you need, you should have an idea of what the seller is looking to receive, okay? So you're going to start by reviewing comparable properties that you have brought. You'll underline key features that specifically add value on those comparables. So when I teach this class fully, I show you examples of this, but essentially you're just taking an MLS sheet and you're writing on it. You're circling things like screened porch, 2-car garage, anything that you as a real estate professional know adds value. The reason why you're doing that specifically is because you want to control the narrative of value. You want to control what the narrative of value is. And so when you write and circle on the comps what things are valuable, you're able to deter that conversation around pricing in a more direct way. So write that synopsis of things you learn in the photos, tell them what adds value and what doesn't. And then come to an agreement on pricing and its implications. I've already said it once, but my job is never to tell you what to do. It's just to tell you what happens when you decide what you want to do. Your motivation to offload this property may not be to sell it in the first weekend. So I don't necessarily need to tell you if you're a little overpriced, we can have a conversation on what that would look like. Everyone's motivations are different. I'm here to get you the most money, the best terms, and the best price, and to make your life less stressful. It's now my responsibility to figure out what that looks like, right? So from what I've seen here, what do you think where your value falls? You may review a seller net sheet. And again, tell them what happens with various pricing. If we priced at what you're saying, I think this is what would happen. If we price at what this is based off my professional experience, if we priced off of this number, here's what would happen. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Show them that you are the expert. And the way you go about setting the expectations truly is simple. If you say, if we price at this, we're likely going to have 30 days on market, as a very clear example. Now, what's beautiful, and this is what I would tell my sellers, is I will never give you advice that is based off emotion. I will always give you advice that is based off data. So what's going to happen is when we go to market, we're going to see the amount of showings that we get based on this price. I actually can look through Showing Time, which is our showing service. I can see how many showings in this zip code, in this price point that we should be getting. If we're not getting that amount of showings, then it's time for us to have a conversation around a price reduction. But the conversation will always be data driven with a seller. It's never going to be emotionally driven. Yeah, my job is not to tell you what to do. My job is to tell you what happens when you decide what you want to do. That's a tongue twister. My job is not to tell you what to do. My job is to tell you what happens when you decide what you want to do. It's all about setting expectations. Pricing is fun. So the magic words, once we've gone over our, our pre-listing, we've done a walkthrough, we've sat down, we've gone over what's valuable to them. We've talked about pricing. Now it's time to transition to the part where we're actually closing for the agreement. And the magic words that our team says are you ready to start a relationship? Great. There's paperwork for that. It's not combative. It's not pushy, because the way we see our business is that when we enter into a client relationship, it is a relationship. Now, what's great, and we will tell this to our sellers when we pull out the paperwork, this is not a marriage certificate. This is a going steady document. What that means is that when and if you decide to sell, you will be using us. You will not cheat on us, right? You will work with us directly. And unlike most relationships, we'll know the expiration date on this one and who's getting paid what. So it's a fun analogy to use to just say, are we ready to start a relationship? Because really that's the question that's really, most of the time they're going to say yes. If they say no, there's opportunity there. So no, and when that question happens is where we run into the objections. We'll probably get into some objections here in a minute as I kind of wrap this segment up. But what I always say about objections is that whenever you're faced with an objection is just a question you haven't answered. So there's never a reason to not get through an objection other than you quitting asking questions on really what their question is. So you just really want to figure out what their hesitation is in order to handle that objection. It's just a question that you haven't answered. So our immediate response, transparently, when a seller says, no, I'm not ready to start a relationship, is what about everything that we have gone over today? What about everything that we have gone over today makes you hesitant to start a relationship with us? Point blank. What about everything we have gone over today makes you hesitant to start a relationship with us? And let them talk. Some objections could be we're interviewing other agents. Some objections could be we're worried about pricing, right? I promise you, by the way, if you work through my method of discussing pricing, that objection won't happen. If you're running into the objection of interviewing other agents, if you go through this process, you're not going to run into this objection. Most of the time, we do not run into objections once we've followed the rest of it. So I want you to understand, while like, are you ready to start a relationship, our magic words, everything before it is really what makes it happen. It's really what makes them say yes. It's showing them that you are trustworthy, that you're going to get the job done, that you're treating them the way they want to be treated based off what you've assessed with their DISC profile. And by the time you get here, any objection they may have should really be really easy to overcome. I had one years ago that was from Beth. Beth Downey, I'll say her last name. She's referred us a lot of business. Beth and John, her husband, and I sat down, and it was actually to buy at the time. And we got through the question of, are you ready to start a relationship? And they said no. And the reason they said no was because they had been burned by an agent before, right? They had felt like they were trapped in a relationship with someone who was not treating them well. And so my job in that moment was to figure out, where could we come to a consensus together, right? I mean, relationships are two-way streets, and this is an agreement. So what has to happen for us to be comfortable starting a relationship? And with them, it was, listen, let's do this. I completely understand that you have been burned in the past and you're hesitant to sign an agreement. I'm acknowledging what they said. I'm totally ignoring it because, most people would hear how that is and get really upset and offended by that, right? Because how dare you not want to be in a relationship with me? But I'm going to deter it and say, let's do this. Okay, that's a command statement. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's put it in the paperwork that if for any reason you do not believe that I am doing the job that I promised you that I would do, you can provide me a 2 weeks written notice of termination. And I'll tell you why I'm going to put that in there. Because I expect if there's any reason you have to give me a 2 weeks notice, I intend to re-earn your business in that 2 weeks. And they signed. So we really just have to get to what the objection is, and we can get through this. It's just about being ready to actually start a relationship. And lastly is our next steps. Our next steps section is simple. We always want to end the conversation with, here's what's next, and set our next conversation. Here's what's next. Once this paperwork is signed, let's say they didn't sign. Once this paperwork is signed, I'll get us going. I'll get everything arranged. I'll get things scheduled, etc. Say they have signed. Here's what's next. You're going to get copies of this documentation from my admin this afternoon. You'll also be set up on XYZ. We'll have a connected text with our vendor. All of this completes that circle of trust where we're now showing them that we're completely dependable and we do what we say we're going to do. That truly completes that entire circle of trust. And that's something that really you should always be ending a conversation with, whether it be from the listing appointment to when you're actually having conversations around pricing, etc. Here's what happens next. Here's what's next. Always set expectations, because at the end of the day, expectations are what hold the circle of trust together. They're what keep your clients signing agreements, and they're also going to keep your clients referring you business onwards.
Cool. All right. Amazing. We'll see you in the Facebook group. And thank you, Hunter. See you next week. All right. Bye.